All right, so thanks everyone for joining. This is going to be the kickoff call for 12.4 and the secure and defend stage. So what we're going to do during this meeting is review the directional items that we as a group are marking deliverable in the 12.4 release. So we'll talk through each of the individual feature cards here, talk about the problem that we're trying to solve, as well as the proposal that we're currently going to be working towards as part of the next iteration. So with that, let's start with the top one, which is going to be SAST for Kubernetes manifests. So SAST for Kubernetes manifest, the problem we're going to be trying to solve with this one is that it's possible when writing a Kubernetes manifest, when writing those files that define how your cluster is going to work and operate, vulnerabilities could potentially be introduced. There is an open source scanner called KubeSec, which is linked here in the further details of this issue, which we want to integrate with GitLab.com as well as on-premise and start being able to scan those manifest files that may be inside of a user's project. So similarly to how we can do SAST scanning for other languages, being able to scan Kubernetes manifests for vulnerabilities as well will help to resolve any issues that are identified. And especially as we're going to see more and more of our users using Kubernetes to deploy containers inside of cluster environments, this is going to be even more impactful. Any questions on this one?
This is great.
Cool.
Real quick, just to clarify, so this is SAST. We're not, and you could argue about the nomenclature, whether or not secret detection is separate from SAST itself. But the problem to solve kind of hints at a secrets detection kind of approach as well. Are we looking at that, or are we limiting our ambition to just a SAST scanner? Or is this a distinction without a difference?
For the first iteration, we're essentially going to be using what's available in KubeSec today and surfacing those results. So if there are more secret detection capabilities as part of KubeSec, we'll expose those, but certainly there's going to be more we can do with secret detection as a whole beyond just the Kubernetes SAST scanning. Answer your question?
It did, thank you.
Cool. Secondly, we're going to be offering SAST support for the React framework, which is a framework that is used to build JavaScript applications. We're starting to see React become more and more popular in the market. More developers and more users are using it. So similarly to how we can do SAST scanning for other languages, we want to offer this for projects written with React as well, to be able to identify any of those potential issues that may arise and introduce a vulnerability into the code. Any questions on this one?
This is React client side as opposed to React native?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
And thirdly, we're going to be focusing on making SAST compatible with private dependencies. And the problem we want to focus on solving with this is that we know that not every dependency in a project is going to be open source or publicly available. So we want to work on making that experience better for those projects that do have private dependencies that are going to be hosted in a repo that's not public. That way you don't have to make that decision, which isn't a great decision to have to make between either exposing your projects publicly or not running security testing against them. We want you to be able to do both, and that's what this capability is a step in that direction towards. Any questions on this one? Okay. So that is the set of 3 items that are going to be focusing on secure for static and dynamic analysis that are deliverable in this release. We'll switch boards and look at defend now. And so the capability we're going to be focusing on defend for 12.4 is allowing blocking mode for the web application firewall. So the web application firewall, or WAF, that we introduced in 12.3 is currently configured with the default set of rules, and it's currently configured to only report potentially malicious traffic that it's identified. which is great because you get that visibility you need to see what types of attacks you're under. But in 12.4, we're going to let you go and take the next step and actually block that potentially malicious traffic that's been identified. That way, anything that the WAF identifies never even hits your application where it could potentially cause damage. Now, that said, this will be done in a way that fits our security paradigm, as well as our defend guiding principles, specifically that this is going to be an opt-in capability. So you can enable the blocking mode on the WAF when you're confident it's not going to have an impact on any of your good traffic, and when you're ready to enable that blocking setting as opposed to the visibility only setting. Any questions on this one?
Sam, do you imagine this is happening in like a CLI, or is this happening just in the UI itself? That might be a little too detailed for this, but some background in what you're thinking.
Yeah, good question. It's probably a little bit too detailed for this call, since we're talking mostly about the high-level problems we want to solve. But Andy, you and I will certainly need to collaborate and work on this one in the coming weeks. I'm right now kind of thinking that this will be a config file of sorts, but there's certainly some conversations we could probably have about what works best here.
Definitely. Thank you.
I have a question for you. In talking with customers and prospects around Defend and that the direction that we want to go, one of the things that they're really interested in is the ability to take the insight that we learn in dev and apply it to protection in prod. And so I'm curious about, in terms of that story, how much of that will we be able to claim with this?
This one I don't think relates directly to that story so much. This is going to be primarily about things that are happening in production only, and identifying them in production and defending against them at that moment. I think the use case you're talking about, Cindy, is when we get several iterations down the road and we're allowing custom rule sets, that's when we'll start to be able to say, development identified this, update the rule set in production to do that.
Okay.
That's not really what this one's focused on.
Okay, great. Thank you for the clarification.
Good question.
I'll add in. I think there's another feature within the defense space that'll speak more directly towards that when we get into vulnerability management, because then we can leverage the knowledge that we have of what has been deployed to be able to then answer the question of where within your production ecosystem are you vulnerable against specific threats. So I think there's another feature that's targeted at that use case as well. But Sam, please correct me if you think I'm wrong there.
Yeah, that's a good add-on. And so with that, those are the four key capabilities that we're going to be focusing on as part of 12.4, the blocking mode for the WAF, and the three that we just reviewed on the secure board as well. So these are the high-level directional items that we're focusing on, and the deliverable items, which means that we're confident we're going to be able to deliver them, and they are the key things for the release. There will be other things that get delivered as part of the release. Feel free to go to this board, remove these filters, and look at some of the other things that we're prioritizing and working on during this iteration. And as we get closer to the actual release date on the 22nd, you'll start to see those issues getting closed as completed, and then move to the release post if they're complete. And with that, I think we can wrap up today's meeting. Appreciate the time, everyone, and the discussion. Talk soon.